Alrighty folks, so we're into our last unit now, finally. Properties of angles and triangles. So this is the last unit in the course. By the way, the curriculum guide was originally written, it's Unit 3, and it's Chapter 2 of your textbook. We're going to start with sections 2.1 and 2.2. We're going to talk about a magical thing called parallel line transversals. Okay, so we're going to define what a transversal is. We're going to take a look at some parallel line transversals, and we're going to talk about the names that we give to the angles. Okay, so really we're just going to get some vocabulary down there. And then we're going to talk about some of the properties of parallel line transversals, and those are important. All right, so let's get right to it. Definition. A line that intersects two or more other lines at distinct points is what we call a transversal. Okay, so this is a transversal. Now, if you look here, we have two lines, L1 and L2, that I've labeled in red, but are actually drawn in blue. And if another line sort of crosses over them both in two different places, then we call that a transversal. If the lines L1 and L2 happen to intersect and the transversal hits at that point of intersection, then it's not really a transversal. So that's why we have to say at distinct points. Alrighty. So parallel line transversals and their angles. So let's say our lines L1 and L2 that we started with are actually parallel to one another. Okay, and that's what those little arrows that we have written on there mean. It means that things are all parallel. Okay, so then what we kind of do, or the way that I like to see this anyway, is I look at where the transversal intersects the parallel lines at each of those points, and I get four angles at each intersection. And those two intersections will look more or less identical to one another, and just in different places. So any angles that are sort of in the same position at both of those two intersections, like angle A and angle C here, are what we call corresponding angles. Okay, so we should have four pairs of those. E and G are also corresponding, B and D are corresponding, and F and H would be corresponding. Okay, so we've listed all the corresponding angles here. All right, so it's kind of like similar triangles. They have to be corresponding parts, sort of in the same relative position, only in their own place. Okay. So now what we're going to look at is we're going to talk about vertically opposite angles, and these are ones that we should be familiar with anyway. Vertically opposite angles don't even have to be on a transversal. If I have two angles that are just sort of across an X like that, those are called vertically opposite. Sometimes they're just called vertical angles, but your textbook says vertically opposite, so we'll go with that. So we've got pairs of vertically opposite angles here. A and F, E and B, C and H, and G and D are all pairs of vertically opposite angles. Okay. Now we're going to talk about some exterior and some interior angles. Interior angles are angles that are going to be in between the two parallel lines, and exterior angles will be angles that are outside the two parallel lines. Okay, and then we call sometimes pairs of them as alternating or same side. So let's look at the interior ones first. Okay, so I'm going to use the highlighter here, I think, because it's an important one here, and I want to make sure that I don't sort of clutter it up too much on you. So angle F is an interior angle. Okay, angle G is also an interior angle. Okay, and they are on the same side of the transversal. So if I clump F and G together, they would be what we call same side interior angles. Thusly, if I take A and let's see, another one, and H, okay, those are both exterior angles because they're outside the parallel lines, and also they're on opposite sides of the transversal, so those two angles would be called alternate. When they're on opposite sides, we call them alternate, and they're exterior. So you see that A and H are listed here together as alternate exterior angles. Oops, right there. Okay, so if I wanted alternate interior angles, that's the last one that we haven't looked at yet, they would have to be two angles that are inside the lines L1 and L2 to be interior, and they have to be on opposite sides of the transversal. So for instance, B and G right here would be alternate interior angles. So it's just a matter of knowing what the two words mean. Alternate or same side, that refers to the transversal, whether you're on the same side or different sides of the transversal. And then interior or exterior tells you whether or not you're inside the parallel lines or outside the parallel lines. Okay? All right. Now, pairs of angles like that are either going to be congruent or what we call supplementary. So let's see. If I look at these two vertically opposite angles, and I'm going to start with those because we've had those before. Vertically opposite angles are congruent or equal. Okay? The same sign that we use for approximately equal to sometimes is the sign we use for congruent. So we'll write that there. So vertically opposite angles are congruent. Corresponding angles, you'll notice, the corresponding angle for this one will be this angle right here. Okay? And those are also congruent. Alternate interior angles, so like this 108 degrees here, so alternate, so I have to jump over the transversal but stay interior. Alternate interior angles, they're also congruent. Alternate exterior angles, like this 108 here, jump across the transversal, stay exterior, like this one, those are also congruent. Same side interior angles, however, if I stay on the same side of the transversal, my same side interior angles, like this 108 and this 72, or this 72 and this 108, if we're on the same side of the transversal, those are not congruent angles, but 108 plus 72 as an example here, you'll notice that that adds up to 180 degrees. So same side interior angles are what we call supplementary. So supplementary angles means they add up to 180 degrees. Okay? And those are the main properties that we have to know about. Corresponding angles are congruent, vertically opposite are congruent, alternate interior are congruent, alternate exterior are congruent, but same side interior are supplementary. And that's it.